I think you said it once. It's not the lines. It's looking for drivable space is more important than the markings in real life, because that's how your mind's actually working.
Yeah.
Even if there's a lane, you can't. There's someone there. It's more drivable space that's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So, actually, we recently found that we need we had like pretty good recognition of lines and what's technically drivable space, but we actually need what is road, and as opposed to what is the most probably the road as opposed to drivable space, and what is and then a whole subset on curbs. Well, I mean, it's like video games have drove computing technology, especially GPUs, massively. It's like that's the only thing you need a GPU for was to have the game look better, and so those massive resources put into rendering games to be more realistic, and then those same GPUs ended up being very useful for neural nets, and gave a huge boost to AI. So sort of video games to better graphics to AI, and then that same thing is sort of quite key to self-driving.
In your opinion, what is the new disturbing thing that will come in technology next? What's next in technology?
What's next in technology?
That will disturb the way we live, the way we think, the way we do business.
Well, the most near-term impact from a technological standpoint is autonomous cars, like fully self-driving cars. Like I said, that's going to happen much faster than people realize. It's going to be a great convenience to be an autonomous car, but there are many people whose jobs it is to drive. So in fact, I think it might be the single largest employer of people is driving in various forms. And so then we need to figure out new roles for what do those people do.
So in developing AI chips for autopilot, what we found was that there was no system on the market that was capable of doing inference within a reasonable cost or power budget. So if we had gone with conventional GPUs and CPUs and that kind of thing, we would have needed several hundred watts, and we would have needed to fill up the trunk with computers and GPUs and a big cooling system, which is important for range for an electric car. So we developed our own AI chip, the Tesla full self-driving computer, with dual system on chips with the 8-bit and accelerators for doing the dot products. We're now labeling in 3D video. So this is hugely different from previously where we were labeling essentially a bunch of single images from the 8 cameras, and they would be labeled at different times by different people. And some of the labels, you literally can't tell what it is you're labeling. It basically made it sort of in some cases impossible to label, and the labels had a lot of errors. Now, with our new labeling tools, we label it in video. So we actually label entire video segments, and the system, so you get basically a surround video thing to label, and with the surround video and with time. So it's now taking all cameras simultaneously and looking at how the images change over time and labeling that. And then the sophistication of the neural nets in the car and the overall logic in the car has improved dramatically.
We talked about Tesla Autopilot. There's also Tesla Summon, and I love that name, the Summon, where
Right.
you summon the Tesla with your mobile phone. And we did talk about this earlier. I know that there's a big gap between those two programs and self-driving cars, but is Tesla on its way to a driverless model?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole industry ultimately will be producing autonomous cars. And if you fast forward, let's say 10 or certainly not more than 15 years, I think almost all cars produced will be autonomous.
All cars produced will be autonomous.
All new cars, yes. But that's not the same as all cars on the road, because there's roughly 2 billion cars and trucks on the road, and just under 100 million produced every year. So the production rate is only 5% of the fleet size.
Yeah.
But if you say of new cars produced, I'd be surprised if a majority of them are not self-driving in let's say, 10 to 15 years.
One of the things that people are so excited about is the fact that it's got autopilot. And you put out this video a while back showing what that technology looked like, or would look like.
Yeah.
There's obviously autopilot in Model S right now.
Yeah.
What are we seeing here?
Yeah, so this is using only cameras and a GPS. So there's no LiDAR or radar being used here. This is just using passive optical, which is essentially what a person uses. The whole road system is meant to be navigated with passive optical or cameras. And so once you solve cameras or vision, then autonomy is solved. If you don't solve vision, it's not solved. So that's why our focus is so heavily on having a vision neural net that's very effective for road conditions.
Right, many other people are going the LiDAR route. You want cameras plus radar is most of it.
You can absolutely be superhuman with just cameras. Like you could probably do 10 times better than humans with just cameras.
So the new cars being sold right now have eight cameras in them.
Yeah.
That they can't yet do what that showed. When will they be able to?
I think we're still on track for being able to go cross country from LA to New York by the end of the year, fully autonomous.
I should point out that I don't actually super hate LiDAR as much as it may sound, but at SpaceX, SpaceX Dragon uses LiDAR to navigate to the space station and dock. Not only that, SpaceX developed its own LiDAR from scratch to do that, and I spearheaded that effort personally. Because in that scenario, LiDAR makes sense. And in cars, it's friggin' stupid. It's expensive and unnecessary, and as Andre was saying, once you solve vision, it's worthless. So you have expensive hardware that's worthless on the car. We do have a forward radar, which is low cost and is helpful, especially for occlusion situations. So if there's like fog or dust or snow, the radar can see through that. If you're going to use active photon generation, don't use visible wavelength, because with passive optical, you've taken care of all visible wavelength stuff. You want to use a wavelength that is occlusion penetrating, like radar. So LiDAR is just active photon generation in the visual spectrum. If you're going to do active photon generation, do it outside the visual spectrum in the radar spectrum. So like at 3.8 millimeters versus 400 to 700 nanometers, you're going to have much better occlusion penetration, and that's why we have a forward radar. And then we also have 12 ultrasonics for near field information, in addition to the 8 cameras and the forward radar. You only need the radar in the forward direction because that's the only direction you're going real fast. So I mean, we've gone over this multiple times, like, are we sure we have the right sensor suite? Should we add anything more? No.
There are over 2 billion vehicles in the world, approaching 2.5 billion cars and trucks in the world. The total new vehicle production capacity is about 100 million, which makes sense because the life of a car or truck before it's finally scrapped is about 20-25 years. So, so the point at which we see full autonomy appear will not be the point at which there is massive societal upheaval, because it will take a long time to make enough autonomous vehicles to disrupt employment. So that disruption I'm talking about will take place over about 20 years. But still, 20 years is a short period of time to have, I think, something like 12 to 15% of the workforce be unemployed.
We will have a million cars that are capable of self-driving. We'll still need regulatory approval, but the capability will be there. This massively increases the value of the car. Basically financially insane to buy anything except an electric car that is upgradable to autonomy. You can see one country after another is putting dates on banning gasoline and diesel cars. The environmental pressure to move away from fossil fuels is getting stronger and stronger. So it's just basically mad to buy a fossil fuel powered car at this point.
because its long-term resale value will be less and less. And then it's also important to buy a car that is upgradable at least to full self-driving, because a car that cannot do self-driving will also be worth not very much.
Any simulation we create is necessarily a subset of the complexity of the real world. So, I mean, we're really deeply enmeshed in dealing with the tiny details of level 5 autonomy, but I'm absolutely confident that this can be accomplished with the hardware that is in the Teslas today, and simply by making software improvements, we can achieve level 5 autonomy.